The NBA draft, one of the biggest events in the NBA calendar. Year after year after year, we see prospects and the biggest names in basketball talent all enter the draft to try and find their way into the NBA. Everyone has a mock draft. Of course, I have mine, you have yours. Other experts will have their own mock draft, but today we're gonna hear mine. Mine is the most important and mine is gospel. Leave a like and subscribe if you want more videos like this. I've got tons and tons of videos, even though we're going into the off season. Let's get straight into the video. So before we start, I should just say a mock draft isn't what I would do. It's my prediction. Read the word, prediction. It's not what I would do. I just think that these teams are going to make these decisions. Some of them stupid, some of them good. But let's go first into the number 1 overall pick. The team, the San Antonio Spurs, will select, no surprises here, Victor Wembanyama. He's a great player, you know what it is. He's 7'4", approximately, might even be taller. He's got handles like a guard. He can shoot the ball across all 3 levels. He's a great defender, could prove to be one of the best help defenders of all time, especially with his 8-foot wingspan. Victor Wembanyama is exactly what you expect him to be. Everyone has this hot take about, is he actually not the best player? He's the best player in the draft. No question. Number 2, the Charlotte Hornets select Brandon Miller. This is not my big board. Just to reiterate, it's not my big board. This is a prediction. Alright? Prediction. Apparently, the Hornets have more interviews and evaluations with Scoot Henderson and with Brandon Miller to determine who they probably will pick. I just think that the Hornets will end up picking up Brandon Miller because they'll see LaMelo Ball as being their franchise player and they wouldn't want any guard play to interfere with that. Which I can understand. Whether I condone it or not, that's a different story. But Brandon Miller's still a great talent. Most other draft classes, he'd be number 1 overall pick. He can score across all 3 levels. He's an okay enough defender. He's a natural scorer, so he'd work well with LaMelo Ball. He might not have the athleticism that you might want, but he's a 6'8" wing scorer who can score quite a bit. It's not much better than that in the NBA right now. And you pair him up with PJ Washington. Here they're going to re-sign Miles Bridges. Tough one there, Miles. Obviously, they have still got Mark Williams and you've got LaMelo Ball there. That's a good 5-piece if you add Brandon Miller to that. And at number 3, you have Portland Trail Blazers and their pick. I think the Portland Trail Blazers will trade this pick. Even if they don't, it's a good pick. Scoot Henderson. Who, for me, the second best player in the draft, full stop. He's a good passer, he's incredibly explosive, he can dunk the ball like anyone. He's a pretty decent defender, he can improve defensively, especially with his strength and his explosiveness and his agility. He could prove to be a really good defender on the perimeter. And the main important thing for Scoot Henderson is he's played against somewhat NBA competition in the G League. It's not like other players playing in OTE, for example, or other players playing in college where they're playing against college students. He's playing against men the entire time. If he can really develop his shot, he could prove to be one of the best NBA players and one of the best prospects that we've seen in years. But moving on, I don't know what Houston are cooking up right now. I don't know if they're going to try go for James Harden. I don't know if they've agreed anything with James Harden. I personally wouldn't like them to get James Harden. I like what Houston are cooking a little bit. I know they've been accused of having no real culture, no real vets. I feel like they can develop a culture. You know, Jabari's there with Jalen Green. And now they have a great coach in Ime Udoka. So I'm not sure I really want James Harden in there. Just add a few pieces, maybe a Dylan Brooks. But right now they haven't got their franchise point guard. I mean, I'm of the opinion that Kevin Porter Jr. isn't really a point guard. He's more of a shooting guard. He's more of a get his own bucket type of guy. But Amen Thompson is a really good passer. He's explosive. The one thing he could do is develop his shot, but he's still a really good defender as well. And he has a really high ceiling. It's just that he's played against OTE competition, which is nowhere near even college level, let alone NBA level. But we'll see how he develops across his first year in the NBA. Hopefully it's a good development. Amen. At number 5, I have the Detroit Pistons selecting Ausar Thompson. This one was a tough one. I mean, Detroit could use some shooting, I guess. But I mean, they have 2 guards, Cade Cunningham and they have Jaden Ivey. I don't know if they want to add another shooting guard to that mix or add someone like Ausar Thompson who's purely athleticism and explosiveness. And I feel like that would fit the way Cade Cunningham plays quite well, especially having James Wiseman as well in the front court. I think it's quite good for the development of their guards having a player like Saul Thompson. Saul Thompson is developing his shot. That's the one thing he has over Amen, and he's a pretty okay point guard. He just needs to develop, as his shot selection isn't amazing, but he can improve, you know, and he relies too heavily on his athleticism, but he can develop that across the first year. There's no real expectations on Detroit right now, so he can really develop and try to improve at the NBA level across his rookie year. See, if we thought number 5 was a tough one for the Pistons, number 6 for the Orlando Magic is a really, really hard one. I don't know how much faith they have in Markelle Fultz. I mean, he's shown quite a few flashes of that starting lead guard's role for a team like the Orlando Magic. He's shown flashes. He can be great defensively as well and playmaking wise, and he's developed his shot quite a bit since his rookie year in Philadelphia. So you know what, I'm going to say they have faith, and they have a big hole at their 2 guard position. Jalen Suggs hasn't developed as fast as they wanted. I'm a big fan of Jalen Suggs, but I feel like he needs to develop rapidly if he wants to take that starting role in Orlando. So I'm going to go with Cam Whitmore. Cam Whitmore's a pretty good shooter, a really good shooter. He can develop to be, he has all the tangible assets to be a good defender. So I feel like at the NBA level, he'll probably develop to be a 3 and D wing player, which is quite sought after in today's NBA. You know, everyone's and their mum's trying to get a player like OG Anunoby right now. So it's a good pick if you can pick him up in the draft, Cam Whitmore. It's between Cam Whitmore and Anthony Black. You know, Anthony Black can take that lead guard position, but I think I'm going to go with Cam Whitmore for the Orlando Magic. I didn't even notice my sleeve was up the entire time, and nobody told me, not one of you told me. Well, at number 7 we have the Indiana Pacers, and the Indiana Pacers, they need a 4 or a 5 if you play Miles Turner at the 4, but they probably need a 4. I'm not sure that NBA executives are sold on Taylor Hendricks. Taylor Hendricks has had a good year in UCF, but it's one that wasn't expected, you know, so you're taking a gamble on him. And like, there's a lot of discourse with outside analysts and people on NBA Twitter, for example, talking about how good Taylor Hendricks is. But there hasn't been a lot of chatter from NBA executives, the real people that see it, the scouts that watch. So I don't think they're sold enough, and I think they're going to really go for Jarace Walker. I think Jarace Walker's a great player. He's a good lob man. He could have a great 2-man game with a player like Tyrese Halliburton, and he's a strong man. Big body. Next, we have the Washington Wizards. My team, obviously. I don't know. I was sure who I think we'd go for at the time. I think it was between Anthony Black and Cason Wallace. If Anthony Black was still on the board, we'd go for Anthony Black, and if not, I would have thought we went for Cason Wallace. I mean, just look at this picture here of Anthony Black in the Wizards jersey. He's a baby Caron Butler in this. But now we've blown it up. We just traded away Bradley Beal. I was going to make a video, but I didn't really want to cry on camera. Now I'm not sure at all where we're going to start. I think we're just going to go for the best player available at the number 8 overall pick. And right now, with everything left on the board, I think that might be Anthony Black. I'm not sure Anthony Black has a high ceiling, but the best player available right now, given all of the circumstances, ceiling and ability and floor, accounting for everything, I think it's Anthony Black. He's developing his mid-range shot. He's not a great shooter from beyond the perimeter, but he's a great defender. He's great inside the paint. He's a great playmaker. And I feel like that is a great start to a rebuild that we could possibly have. If KP ends up staying, then he'll have a great 2-man game, Anthony Black probably. And if we end up keeping Chris Paul, I don't think we will. And by this time this video comes out, we might have already traded Chris Paul somewhere else. He'll be a great mentor to Anthony Black, but I'm not sure. With the 9th overall pick, the Utah Jazz, I say, have picked the best player available right now as well. It's Grady Dick. I like Dick. Whoa. I like Grady Dick. I think he's a good player. His tough shot making is probably one of the best in this year's draft, his tough shot making. He knows how to find his spot, shoot. He's a 42% shooter from 3. I think he's pretty similar to Lauri Markkanen in terms of his tendencies, except maybe Lauri Markkanen's probably a better finisher inside the paint, a bit more athletic than Grady Dick. But I feel like they work together quite well, to be honest, because Grady Dick's a pretty good playmaker for his size and his positioning anyway. So It's a bit tough. Once again, I think it's just the best player available right now for the Utah Jazz. I'm not sure the direction the Utah Jazz are really going in. I don't think Larry Markkinen can be a franchise player, but we'll see the way they pick their players and how they move forward as an organization. They have a ton of picks, so they're in rebuilding mode. But with Larry Markkinen, they just about missed out on the play-in tournament. So at number 10, we have the Dallas Mavericks. Tough one. They can either go for a big or they can go for a shooter. They lost a lot of defense and depth trading for Kyrie Irving, so it's difficult for me to analyze which direction they want to go in. Whether they go for a big, because they haven't got a lot of talented bigs around there. I mean, they have Christian Wood, but I don't know how long he's staying there. Or they could go for a shooter. I mean, they only really have I don't even know who they have. Reggie Bullock is their best shooter. So I'm going to go down the shooting avenue. I think if you keep Kyrie Irving, you re-sign Kyrie Irving, you still have Luka Doncic. You need a player that can catch and shoot. A player that can find space and catch and shoot. A player with a lot of stamina to play defense as well. And for me, that's Jordan Hawkins. I know Jordan Hawkins isn't expected to go this high in most people's mock drafts, but Jordan Hawkins for me is incredibly talented. He's a great shooter. I don't have the stats. I think he shot like 39% from 3 this season, but he's a player that runs around in circles, picking up the ball, being able to shoot. He's a great player, great movement off of him, and I really like Jordan Hawkins, and I feel like the Dallas Mavericks would really like him as well. So for me, number 10 overall pick, Dallas Mavericks, Jordan Hawkins. 4 picks left. I'm doing it like Clay, aren't I? 4 picks left because I'm not going to go past the lottery because I'm not that much of a draft expert. I watch a little bit of college ball, but not that much. So with the 11th overall pick, you have the Orlando Magic again with their second pick in the lottery. I'm going to go with a rogue shout here. I feel like with the second pick, they have more chance to experiment, and they could take Cason Wallace, I guess. He is essentially a Markelle Fultz Jr. coming in with not a great jumper, but great defensively. But they do need to fill that two spot, and I feel like they can experiment with someone with athleticism, someone with an ability to excite their fans. And I don't think they'll go with Keontae George, given the fact they've picked Cam Whitmore on my mock draft. So I'm going to go with Bilal Coulibaly, a player that's played with Victor Wembanyama and really excited people, especially across the LNB playoffs. I've really been impressed with him. I didn't even know who he was before the LNB playoffs. So I feel like they can take that experiment. I think he might jump into the lottery. So with the 11th overall pick, Orlando to take Bilal Coulibaly. And number 12 is the Oklahoma City Thunder. The most successful rapper, 35 and under, Drake. I feel like Chet Holmgren coming back in his rookie year now. I think hasn't built enough body mass to play that 5 role. So I think it's Derek Lively. Derek Lively can play the 4, he can play the 5. His frame is really built. I really enjoy it. I think I really like the way Derek Lively plays. Derek Lively the second, I should say. So I feel like with Chet Holmgren playing the 4, it leaves a great open spot for Derek Lively to come in and play that 5 role, especially with Josh Giddey. They could have a great 2-man game, Derek Lively and Josh Giddey. I mean, he has great upside and he's an experiment. And as we've seen, Oklahoma City Thunder can develop their youth players. So him being an experiment, there's no better environment for him than Oklahoma City Thunder. So he's a great defender and he's a great lob threat for a player like Josh Giddey or even Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's looking to develop his playmaking game. Had a great jump in his playmaking last season. Number 13, we have Toronto. Toronto just let go of Fred VanVleet. I feel like they can afford to experiment. You know, they still have Scotty Barnes, he's a young player. I feel like they're going to let go of Pascal Siakam. I feel like that's the motion, you know, getting a new coach and all that. I feel like they're looking to go into rebuild mode. They're not quite there yet, but they're looking to go into it. And so for an experiment, I've got Kobe Buffkin. Kobe Buffkin really impressed fans in his sophomore year at Michigan this year. And I was really impressed. I didn't know who he was before his sophomore year. He has a great floater game. He's gained some consistency shooting inside the arc. He can still develop outside the arc. But I feel like playing with a player like Scotty Barnes, a player that can get his own, and a player, Scotty Barnes, who can make quite a bit for his position, I feel like they can have a great partnership in Toronto. And I feel like Toronto should be willing to take this experiment. And finally, in New Orleans, we have Cason Wallace. I apologise, Cason, for not going earlier in my mock draft. I just see you falling. I think you're talented. I think you're incredibly talented. As a player, great defender, great playmaker, not a great shooter, but really, really good defender. Probably the best perimeter defender in this year's draft. I feel like, yeah, with the defense they have right now, in a player like Trey Murphy III being on that team, I feel like perimeter defense could be something they're looking into, and playmaking, especially with a player like CJ McCollum. Although he's a small guard, he's a player that gets his own, so he can play the 2 guard like he did in Portland. And playing next to Cason Wallace can help develop the scoring of a player like Zion Williamson alongside a player like Brandon Ingram. I don't know what they're planning to do. Apparently they're trying to get into the 2nd or 3rd pick. We'll see what happens with that. But if they still keep their 14th overall pick, I think they're probably going to pick Cason Wallace. They could go a different avenue in New Orleans. They could go for a center. I mean, Jonas Valanciunas, do they want to make him their franchise center? I don't know. But for me, I'm sticking with Cason Wallace. So that is my mock draft. I didn't know mock drafts took this long. Jesus Christ. It took me so long to write these notes. But I've got my lottery. If people want it, I'll do more. But I can't be asked. Maybe for my big board, I'll do first round in its entirety. But for my lottery mock draft, you saw my 1 to 14. And hopefully we see a good draft on Thursday. Something that really excites people across the country. Please like, comment and subscribe. Make sure you subscribe. And I'll see you, man, in a bit. Boom.